Hey guys, Jeff here from Botanical, and one of the most important things you're going to need in your vegetable garden is compost. Recently cut back all this lavender and I have a lot of material here I need to get rid of, so a new compost bin is in order because my one is full. So I thought a good opportunity to show you firstly how to turn a simple plastic bin into a functioning compost bin, and as well as talk about some other small space ideas for composting and show you a little bit about the basics of creating compost and how you can get a really good compost in a small space. So before I get in and show you how to make one of these, I thought I'd just talk about sort of more of what you're sort of looking for of a compost bin. So ideally you have space with a bare patch of earth that you can maybe make like a little bin with some old pallets or something like that that you can pile stuff up in, or even just pile stuff up and maybe turn it every now and then and really get the compost going. But or you could get one of the traditional compost bins, which is essentially the same as this, except they're usually a bit bigger and they have no bottom, and you can put that on a patch of earth that allows decomposes like worms and isopods and things to get up in there and do their thing and help you decompose stuff. But if you're like me and you have limited space, this is a good option. You can also scale this down to, I probably wouldn't go smaller than like a 10 litre container, like a 10 litre bucket. I've seen them done with 20 litre buckets, but I like these 60 litre bins. I think they're a good size for it. So you can make one of these and put them on the ground. This used to be up in the garden, but it's a bit of an effort to get to and put things in. So I've decided to move them down here into this patch here that doesn't really get used for anything. It's really shady in here. There's obviously a clothesline there, but these are quite small, so that doesn't really impede that at all. But they're a pretty simple construction. Well, they're already made, but they're a pretty simple process. All you got to do is drill lots of holes down the sides, and I did sort of a full line of holes down each, like on all four sides, and then I did some other sort of holes variously placed along the outside, and I've drilled a few in the bottom. So essentially what these holes are for is just to let air flow through. You want to get oxygen and airflow into your compost bin. It's going to help the microbes and stuff break down that material faster. And the holes in the bottom are for drainage, so if this starts to get a bit dry, you're going to want to put just a little bit of water in there, and that'll just help the worms, like especially if you've got somewhere where it's getting a bit of sun and it might be getting quite hot, just to let the worms essentially don't die, because they like a nice moist environment, and those holes just let that drain out. Or if you have it on a piece of earth, it'll let things get up as well. So these are really good. Till you fill them to about here, they're quite easy to just pick up and shake. You do that once every week or two, just to help essentially just to help mix the compost through. Any newer material that's on top will get mixed in with some of the older compost, and that'll help kickstart the composting process on those newer items. Once they get a bit taller, you might need to get a fork like this one, and you can just stick it in there and turn it. Essentially, just get it in there and just flip it around. Once they get to sort of this height, which is about where this one is now, it gets a bit hard to do that without spilling it everywhere. So you just got to take your time with it a little bit. Yeah, so now I'll show you how to make one of these. So it's really easy. It's pretty much just drilling holes in the side of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just drill a few holes in the bottom here. And like I said, they're just for drainage. You want to drill them in, if it's a recess like this, you want to drill them in the deepest bits because that's where the water's going to pool. And then you want to do the sides, and for these I just like to use the channels because I just find it easier, but you can just drill them wherever. So like I say, I'm going to do the same as what I did on the other one. I'm just going to do a line. They're probably going to be 2 or 3 centimeters apart, the holes down, and do it essentially in quarters, and then I'll do some ones in the middle. that's pretty much all there is to it. Like I said, that just lets the water drain out. Obviously, you're going to have some plastic bits on the inside. It's probably not the most environmentally friendly way of doing compost, but it does mean that you can compost, which is positive environmentally in itself. So I think if you make a lot of compost out of one of these, it probably helps to offset it a bit. But yeah, I like to just, like I said, just drill 4 lines of holes and then just a few in between, and that just helps with the air circulation. So now we'll talk a little bit about some other options you have for doing this. Oh, by the way, I just used a 5mm drill bit to drill those holes. I just find it a little bit bigger. You can go a bit bigger if you want. I wouldn't go any smaller than that though. I just find that goes through the plastic really easy, and that's what I have laying around. Yeah, so some other options that you have for composting in a small space is something like a benchtop compost bin. So you could do something like bokashi, which uses like a bacteria, an activated bacteria that I can't remember, there's like a pellety thing that you put in there, and that sort of activates the compost and it breaks things down really fast. I guess one of the aspects of that is though that you need someone to bury that compost after it's done its thing. So I'm not really sure how well that would go with container gardening, but if you do actually have an in-ground space that you can use, that might be an option. Or if you could, find somewhere else like a friend's garden or something like that to get rid of it in. Another good option for small space compost is like a worm farm. It's not really compost in the same way this is compost, but you can use your kitchen scraps, you can use your garden scraps and cuttings and stuff in there, and that's a good way to reduce your landfill and sort of get some compost, or some, in terms of worm farming, you get worm castings which you can use on the garden to get better results and better yields. So there are a few other options. I don't have or use any of those other options, or have never used any of those options, so I don't have any personal experience with that, but there are things you can look into if you're not don't want to go for this sort of style of compost bin. So now I'm talking about filling one of these. What I like to do is, on the very bottom layer, is put a few larger sticks, and I like to just do that for a little bit. That just it just helps with keeping oxygen up to the compost, and I think it helps a little bit with drainage. But and they will break down over time as well. So that's how I'm going to start this one. I'll show you the process I go through to get one of these going. There is a few considerations when you're doing compost, so you need to have a bit of a balance, because essentially you're relying on primary decomposers, things like worms and isopods, to sort of eat a lot of the bigger material and break it down. But then you're also relying on microbes and bacterias to get in there and do their thing. So you got to try and balance it. You don't want it to be too dry, you don't want it to be too moist. If it's too moist for a long period of time, it can start to smell. A good compost mix though shouldn't smell. So that's one thing. If your compost is smelling, something's off, your balance is out. In terms of ratio, I find a good mix is about 60% green material to 40% brown material. So brown material is stuff like this, old dead lavender stem. It's dried twigs, leaves, like dried leaves specifically, cardboard, so you can use a lot of cardboard in your compost bin. I wouldn't, you can't really use stuff like cereal boxes and that because they have a coating on them, but I've got some here actually, this sort of box cardboard, as long as there's no plastic and stuff on there, it's fine. They can have stuff like printed on it, as long as doesn't have a plastic sort of coating or film on it. In Australia at least, because all our inks are water-based and they're fine, like they're non-toxic, so you can also compost paper shreddings and stuff like that. So, like I said, I like to make a bit of a base with some more woody materials, some sticks and things. I find it just helps, so I'm just going to break up some of this lavender I've got. So once I've got a bit of a layer like this, I'll pick it up very well, it's quite dark in there. Once I have a bit of a layer, then I'll add some some more green stuff. So I do have, like I said, green stuff's like fresh things. So this is a bit fresher. It's not dry leaves yet. So put some of this stuff in there. Fresh weeds and stuff as well can go in there, as long as they don't have, as long as they're not something that can propagate vegetatively or don't have any seeds. So if you're doing some weeding, you can throw that stuff in. So one thing I like to do is just, once I've got my first few layers in, is to just get a little bit of compost that's already mature. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a few handfuls. And I like to just throw that in. I find it just helps kickstart the process, especially if you can get a little bit in there and maybe get some, it just helps get some of that bacteria already into the mix because it's already all over that compost. If you have enough, you can put in enough that you can also get some worms and stuff going straight away, but I find I like to wait a little bit until I've got some decomposition in here and a bit more structure in there before I add some worms. And you don't have to add worms. I just sometimes, like if I'm digging in pots and I'm sort of refurbishing some potting mix, sometimes I find some worms and stuff in there. I might throw a couple in just to help with the whole system in here. So I'll talk a little bit now about what you can and can't compost, or you should and shouldn't, I guess is probably a better idea. So in a traditional composting style like this, you've got your green and your brown material. So your brown material is, like I said before, things like cardboard, dried sticks, dried leaves, things like this. And your green materials are fresh leaf cuttings, grass clippings, weeds, even if you've got some, like your vegetable garden waste, so you've harvested some things and there's some old stems and stuff or leaves, and you can just chuck them in the compost. So you want to have a good balance of that. Like I said before, 60-40 is a good ratio to go for, but you can, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can maybe be a little bit higher on the green material or a bit lower, higher on the brown material. As long as you're not getting a smell out of here, that's what's important. If it's saying the smell, then something's wrong, and it probably is that you need more brown material in there to sort of help soak up a bit of that moisture and sort of help with decomposition. So there's some things that you don't want to throw in here. So you can throw most things in here. There's a lot of information going around saying you can't put citrus or garlic or onions and stuff like that into your compost bin, like the scraps, which is not true. You can. Obviously, if you had a pure citrus compost bin, it's probably going to be quite acidic, but if you're just throwing your kitchen waste in there, yeah, citrus, pretty much any of your kitchen waste can go in here. The things you want to look out for and avoid are things like meat. If you eat meat, then you don't want to put that in here. Fatty things, oily things, you don't want any of that in here because that's not going to break down very well. It probably would eventually break down, but it's going to be a really slow process, and it's definitely going to make your compost bin stink, and it's just not recommended. Certain systems, like I mentioned before, Bokashi can actually get through some of that stuff, and it's a good way to do that if that's the sort of thing that you if you do eat meat and things like that. But what you want in here is pretty much just your veggie scraps, your fruit scraps, garden waste, and things like that. I also sometimes tip in, like if I've got some really old, if I'm repotting some stuff and there's root balls or potting mix that is a bit far gone and I need to refurbish it, instead of just mixing it in with some new compost, if I've got some space in my bin, sometimes I just throw it in there, and then it just adds a little bit more soil, already broken down stuff into the system again, and it just helps revitalise it. So yeah, they're the things you sort of should and shouldn't put in here, but yeah, it's all about just finding a balance and then waiting. So that's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you learned a little bit about composting and what you can and can't compost, and maybe have some ideas of how you can compost in your small space. Like I said, this system that I'm using here, it's not perfect. Obviously, if you can get it onto some bare earth, that's going to be better, but it can be scaled down to a 20 litre bucket. You could probably even go as small as a 10 litre bucket. I probably wouldn't go any smaller than that. Might get a bit hard with the balance and stuff there. And it can fit really into any part of your garden, as long as you're keeping it you're turning it often, and you're keeping it in a good spot, and you're making sure that it's got enough moisture, not too much moisture, it's not drying out. you're going to get really good results and you're going to get some really good compost. So as always, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye for now.